So we got player mechanics, enemies, door switches, houses, trees, grass, and dummies. Now, I just need to put it all together by making a level that doesn't suck. Having played video games since the 80s and growing up during the NES, SNES era with the most iconic platformers out there, you'd think I'd have a decent understanding of what makes a fun level. However, once you sit on the other side as a creator instead of a player, little details begin to slap you in the face, and your respect grows for those guys who made games in the early days without all the resources we have today. In my early concepts, I focused on the art style first, but the platforming suffered and everything felt too small or just impractical. While it is important to settle on the style you want, it's better to have a foundation to apply it to. So my approach to level building is this. First, use simple blocks and platforms to lay the level out. Then I would design a level in Photoshop in one single frame, which would help me get the feel and look of the area that I'm designing. After that, it's just converting the art into modular parts that I can use in Unity, and then add the art later. This may be an obvious method of design to some, and I'm not telling you anything new, but I'm the type that has to do it myself, fail, and do it again in a different way to understand how the process works. One rule I had to settle on early is the height of the platforms. I like the feel of this jump, so I use the grid as a measure to eyeball the maximum height for my platforms. As long as I don't break this rule, everything flows well, unless I want to add a power-up later on to increase the jump power. We'll see. Another issue I had to solve are slopes. This was a pain in my backside. I see so many games use uneven platforms to navigate. I thought it would be easy to do. However, all the courses that I took, I don't see any mention of this simple problem with handling slopes. My character just slides with this built-in rigid body, and I don't know what to do about it. I had to figure this out. So I went online and I did some digging. I finally found a few videos on the topic, all of which had their own approach. After watching a few videos multiple times over so I could understand the logic, I worked it into my already Frankenstein of a character controller by simply freezing the rigid body on the X whenever the player stops moving. However, that broke my knockback logic, so I set up a bool to ignore this when an enemy was nearby. I know this is really janky, but it works. Kinda. As with most platformers today, I wanted to create a nice parallaxing effect. There are some resources that simulate this effect with a script, where all the game objects are on the same Z position and everything is arranged by just sorting layers. I tried this method, but I decided I'd rather use a perspective camera and place the layers in 3D space. My background is in motion graphic design, so I'm used to working in 3D space. It just makes more sense to my brain to see where everything is at. Another aspect of my level design is using these box frames to basically focus all the action in one section so Unity isn't rendering the entire level at once. I'm hoping this is a way to help performance in the end. I first heard of this method from one of Thomas Brush's videos. However, he never explains how to do it, so I had to do some digging and found this old video that demonstrates it well. I adapted this script and fit it into my project. It's a very simple method where you set up a game object with a box collider as a trigger, so that when you enter that trigger, it activates the current level frame box and deactivates all other neighboring frame boxes or game objects. I think it's pretty cool. In addition to all this, I have added a simple teleporting system which will move the player to one location of the scene using empty game objects as a transform variable. Setting this up as a prefab, I can easily use this for things like portals, doors, and cave entrances. All I have to do is simply place the prefab over a door like this, connect the empty game object I'll be using for my teleport position, make sure the teleporter is set to the appropriate layer for the script to run, and voila! I love simple setups like these, which can be used as a basis for many creative game design ideas. I also set up a key and switch system for gates, locked doors, and whatnot. Having made many changes and modifications with this system, I have ended up with a number of copied script machines which I tend to lose track of. I honestly don't know which ones are old and new. I should probably reorganize this. I have a specific system for adding keys to the inventory, but I wanted to expand this to use more than just a basic key opening a gate, to something more specific like obtaining a key item which will open the way to progress further in the game. I estimate that I'll have about 5 of these throughout the adventures, so I set up an application variable of a list of bools in which the other scripts can check and see if the player has acquired that item. Also, I have levers which can be used to open gates or activate platforms. I like the way this is set up so that I can simply swap out the sprites which are used as the lever to make it fit in each scenario, like this lever compared to these lamp switches. So finally, I want to go over the enemy spawn system. Since I'm using a frame box setup to only reveal part of the level the player is currently at, this made it harder to keep any number of enemies in the scene. So I set it up to instantiate enemies whenever the player enters a frame box using a single game object running a script, as a spawner, and cycling through a list of empty game objects as the transform. Wow, that sounds confusing.
That don't make no sense.
Let me try that again. So I set it up that whenever the player enters the frame box, the script cycles through a number of transform points to spawn a specific type of enemy throughout the level. This I found to be more interesting than have all the enemies go extinct once the player has explored the entire scene. One problem I ran into though was that the enemies could spawn on top of each other repeatedly whenever the player went in and out of frame. I had to figure out how to destroy the enemies that had spawned when the player leaves the frame, so I added a function to find all the objects with the enemy tag and destroy them. But then I ran into another problem. Upon exiting the frame and then entering another frame running the same script, they conflicted and I ended up with enemies spawning sometimes and sometimes they were not. It took me a few days to figure this out. I know, I'm slow, don't make fun. But I finally got it fixed when I made the script find all the enemies and then destroy them when the player enters the trigger.
Find them and destroy them.
And then spawn the enemies for that section, thus preventing duplicates and destroying any lingering enemies from the frame I just exited. Boom! Figured it out. So I hope this devlog has not only helped by sharing how I problem solve, but it inspires you all on your game dev journey. If you have a channel logging your game dev journey, please share in the comments below. I'd love to check them out. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe to see more on the development of Milo, Tale of the Elder Seed. See ya!